The scent of unfamiliar perfume woke him before his eyes even opened. Mark Reynolds froze, his heart hammering against his ribs as he realized someone else was in his small apartment. The digital clock on his nightstand read 5:47 a.m., 13 minutes before his alarm would sound, beginning another exhausting day of juggling his job and single fatherhood. But something was different this morning. Something was wrong. If you're enjoying this story, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more emotional journeys that will touch your heart. Your support means everything to us. Mark slipped out of bed, careful not to make a sound. His first thought was of Emma, his 6-year-old daughter sleeping in the room across the hall. Grabbing the baseball bat he kept beside his bed, a remnant from his college days and now his only weapon, he crept toward the kitchen where he heard the soft clink of a mug against his countertop. He wasn't prepared for what he saw. Victoria Chen, the formidable CEO of Reynolds & Chen Architecture, stood in his kitchen wearing nothing but his old university shirt that hung to her mid-thighs. Her normally perfect hair was tousled, and she was humming softly while making coffee. His coffee. In his kitchen. At dawn. "Ms. Chen," he managed to croak, lowering the bat. She turned, seemingly unsurprised by his presence in his own home. Her eyes, usually sharp and calculating during board meetings, were soft in the gentle morning light. "Mark," she said, her voice lacking its usual commanding edge. "I'm sorry about your wife." Those 6 words knocked the air from his lungs more effectively than any physical blow could have. 3 years had passed since Sarah's death, yet Victoria Chen, the woman who had barely acknowledged his existence at work beyond assigning him projects, somehow knew. And cared. But how was she in his apartment? Why was she wearing his shirt? And why did it feel like his world had just shifted on its axis? ******. 24 hours earlier, Mark had been rushing to finish the Henderson project designs. The office had emptied hours ago, but as a junior architect with a reputation to build and a daughter to support, he couldn't afford to miss deadlines. His desk lamp cast the only light in the vast open-plan office. "Reynolds, you're still here." Mark jumped at Victoria Chen's voice. The CEO rarely ventured to this floor, and never this late. "Ms. Chen." "Yes, just finishing the Henderson revisions for tomorrow's presentation." She approached his desk, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. At 38, Victoria Chen had built Reynolds & Chen from a small design firm into one of the most prestigious architecture companies in the city. Rumor had it that she worked 18-hour days and expected the same from everyone else. She was brilliant, ruthless, and completely unapproachable. "You've been here until midnight 3 times this week," she said, studying the dark circles under his eyes. "The Henderson project isn't worth burning yourself out." Mark blinked in surprise. He hadn't realized anyone was tracking his hours, least of all the CEO. "I can't afford to miss deadlines," he said simply. "Your daughter. Emma, isn't it? Who watches her when you work late?" The question caught him off guard. How did Victoria Chen know his daughter's name? "My neighbor, Mrs. Patel. She's very kind, but I try not to impose too often." Victoria nodded, her expression unreadable. "Finish up and go home, Reynolds. The presentation isn't until 2 p.m. tomorrow." As she walked away, Mark couldn't shake the feeling that something strange had just happened. Victoria Chen had never shown interest in any employee's personal life before. *****. The next morning, the Henderson presentation went flawlessly. Mark had prepared meticulously, but he still felt a surge of relief when the clients smiled and shook hands, contract signed. As the meeting room emptied, Victoria lingered. "Good work, Reynolds." "Thank you, Ms. Chen." She seemed about to say something else when her assistant appeared at the door. "Ms. Chen, your 3 o'clock is waiting," and Mr. Takahashi called again about the Tokyo project. Victoria's professional mask slipped back into place. "Thank you, Diane. I'll be right there." Mark gathered his materials, trying to ignore the strange disappointment he felt as Victoria left without another word. That evening, disaster struck. Mrs. Patel called just as Mark was packing up to leave. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Reynolds, but my son has been in an accident. I need to go to the hospital right away." Mark's stomach dropped. "Of course, Mrs. Patel. Is he all right?" "They think so, but I need to be there. I've left Emma with my husband, but he needs to come with me." "I'll be right there," Mark promised, already shutting down his computer. He rushed to the elevator, mentally calculating how quickly he could get to Mrs. Patel's apartment. The school's after-hours program had ended at 5:30, and Emma had been with the Patels for nearly an hour already. As the elevator doors opened, he nearly collided with Victoria Chen. "Reynolds? You look like you've seen a ghost." "My childcare fell through," he blurted out. "I need to go." Understanding flashed across her face. "Take my car. It's faster than waiting for a taxi." Before he could protest, she was pressing keys into his hand. "My driver will take you wherever you need to go. I'll catch a ride with someone else." "Ms. Chen, I can't." "You can and you will. Go get your daughter." The kindness was so unexpected that Mark could only nod his thanks before rushing to the waiting town car. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. By the time Mark got Emma home, fed her dinner, helped with homework, and tucked her into bed, he was exhausted. He still had to finish reviewing the Westfield blueprints, but his eyes kept closing as he sat at his small kitchen table. Eventually, he gave up and stumbled to bed, setting his alarm for 5 a.m. to finish before work. He never heard the knock at his door at midnight. Never heard the spare key he'd hidden under the flower pot being used. Never knew that Victoria Chen had come to check on him, to return the portfolio he'd left in her car in his haste. Finding him deeply asleep, she'd meant to leave the portfolio and go. But something made her stay. Perhaps it was the family photos on the wall, Mark, Emma, and a beautiful woman who must have been his wife. Perhaps it was the college architecture textbook still on his shelf, dog-eared and well-loved. Or perhaps it was the half-finished blueprints on the table, evidence of his dedication despite everything. Whatever the reason, Victoria found herself sitting at his kitchen table, completing the blueprint review he'd clearly been too exhausted to finish. Hours passed as she worked, her own exhaustion finally catching up with her. She'd spilled coffee on her blouse, and without thinking, had borrowed one of his t-shirts from the laundry basket. And that's how Mark found her at 5:47 a.m., making coffee in his kitchen, wearing his shirt, looking nothing like the intimidating CEO he knew. "I'm sorry about your wife," she said, and Mark felt the world tilt. "How did you?" "I saw the photos," she gestured to the wall. "And I've noticed how hard you work, how you never complain about staying late even though you're raising a child alone. I admire that." Mark set the baseball bat against the wall, still trying to process what was happening. "You broke into my apartment to tell me that?" A flush crept up Victoria's neck. "I came to return your portfolio. You left it in my car. The door was unlocked, and I was going to leave it on the table, but then I saw your unfinished work and..." She shrugged, suddenly looking vulnerable. "I know what it's like to feel like you're drowning, trying to do everything perfectly." Mark approached slowly, as if she might disappear if he moved too quickly. "So you finished my blueprint review?" She nodded. "And then I spilled coffee on myself, and I was too tired to drive home, so I borrowed your shirt. I'm sorry. This is completely unprofessional." Mark should have been angry. He should have been outraged at the invasion of privacy. Instead, he found himself smiling. "Thank you," he said simply. "For the blueprints. And for yesterday, with the car." Victoria handed him a mug of coffee, their fingers brushing. "I lost my father when I was 7, she said quietly. "My mother worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat. I know what Emma is going through, what you're going through. The revelation stunned him. Victoria Chen, with her designer suits and corner office, had never seemed like someone who understood struggle. Is that why you've been watching out for me? She met his eyes. I've been watching you because you're talented, dedicated, and you never use your circumstances as an excuse. The company needs more people like you. Before Mark could respond, a small voice came from the hallway. Daddy? Who's that lady? Emma stood in her pajamas, rubbing sleep from her eyes, her stuffed rabbit clutched in one arm. Mark and Victoria froze, caught in a moment neither had anticipated. Then Victoria knelt down to Emma's level. I'm Victoria. I work with your dad. I was just bringing him some important papers, and he's making me coffee because I'm very tired. Emma studied her with the frank curiosity only children possess. You're wearing my daddy's shirt. Victoria's composure cracked as she laughed. Yes, I am. I spilled coffee on mine. Your daddy was kind enough to lend me this one. Emma nodded, accepting this explanation. Daddy's shirts are comfy. I wear them sometimes too. They are very comfy, Victoria agreed, her eyes meeting Mark's over Emma's head. Something shifted between them in that moment, a recognition, an understanding. They were no longer just CEO and employee. They were two people who had glimpsed something real in each other. Emma, why don't you go brush your teeth while I talk to Ms. Chen for a minute? Mark suggested. When Emma had disappeared into the bathroom, Mark turned to Victoria. This is unexpected. I should go, Victoria said, suddenly self-conscious. I've imposed enough. Stay for breakfast, Mark heard himself say. Emma makes great pancakes on Fridays. It's our tradition. Victoria hesitated, and Mark saw the conflict in her eyes, the professional boundary she'd already crossed, the personal one she was considering crossing now. Just pancakes, he assured her. And then we can both go to work and pretend this never happened if that's what you want. And if that's not what I want? The question hung between them, loaded with possibilities. Mark took a deep breath. Then we figure it out. One step at a time. Victoria's smile was different from any he'd seen at the office, warmer, more genuine. I'd like that. And I'd love to try Emma's pancakes. ****. 6 months later, Mark woke to the scent of familiar perfume. This time, he wasn't startled. This time, he smiled before he even opened his eyes. Victoria lay beside him, her breathing deep and even. On the nightstand, a framed photo showed the three of them, Mark, Victoria, and Emma, at the zoo, all wearing matching, Family Day, t-shirts that Emma had insisted on. Life had changed in ways Mark could never have predicted. That morning he found his CEO in his kitchen. Victoria had stepped into their lives not as a replacement for what they'd lost, but as something new and unexpected. She'd helped Emma with her science project, showing a patience that surprised everyone. She'd challenged Mark professionally, pushing him toward a promotion he'd thought was years away. And somewhere along the way, they'd fallen in love, not the whirlwind romance of youth, but the steady, deep connection of two people who recognized in each other a kindred spirit. Victoria stirred beside him, her eyes opening slowly. What time is it? Early, Mark whispered, not wanting to wake Emma. Go back to sleep. Instead, Victoria propped herself up on one elbow. I've been thinking. Dangerous, Mark teased. She swatted his arm playfully. I'm serious. I've been thinking about the future. About us. Mark's heart skipped. What about us? Victoria took a deep breath. I want this to be permanent. You, me, Emma. I want to be a family. The words hung in the air between them, a declaration and a question all at once. Mark reached for her hand. Are you proposing to me, Miss Chen? I might be, Mr. Reynolds, she replied, her professional tone belied by the vulnerability in her eyes. "What would you say if I was?" Mark pulled her close, his answer a whisper against her lips. "I'd say it's about time." From the doorway came a small squeal of delight. Emma stood watching them, her stuffed rabbit clutched to her chest, her smile wide enough to light the room. "Does this mean Victoria's staying forever?" she asked, hope making her voice tremble. Mark and Victoria exchanged a look filled with love and certainty. "If that's okay with you," Victoria said. Emma's response was to launch herself onto the bed, wrapping her arms around both of them. "It's more than okay. It's perfect." As the three of them lay tangled together, laughing and planning their future, Mark thought about how life could change in an instant. How a single morning, a borrowed shirt, and 6 unexpected words, "I'm sorry about your wife," had opened the door to a happiness he'd thought was lost to him forever. Sometimes, the most beautiful beginnings came from the most unexpected moments. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Thank you for watching this story of love, loss, and second chances. If it touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more stories that celebrate the resilience of the human spirit. Remember, sometimes the most extraordinary chapters of our lives begin on the most ordinary days. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let us know what story you'd like. #SingleDad woke up to find his CEO wearing his shirt, her first words stunned him, continued. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. 1 year later, Mark stood in the backyard of their new home, watching as Emma chased Victoria around the garden. Their laughter floated through the evening air, a sound that still sometimes caught him off guard with its pure joy. The wedding had been small, just family and close friends gathered in the botanical gardens where Mark had first taken Victoria and Emma for a proper date. Emma had been the flower girl, beaming with pride as she scattered rose petals along the path. Victoria had worn a simple cream dress rather than traditional white, and Mark had felt his breath catch when he saw her walking toward him. "She looks like a princess," Emma had whispered, clutching his hand. "She looks like family," Mark had whispered back. Now, as Victoria caught Emma in her arms and spun her around, Mark reflected on how quickly life could change. 3 years of struggling alone after Sarah's death had hardened him, made him believe that his life would always be about survival rather than joy. He'd accepted that, focusing all his energy on giving Emma the best life he could while keeping his career afloat. He never expected Victoria Chen to break into his apartment and his life, bringing with her a second chance he hadn't known to hope for. "Daddy! Come help us with the flowers," Emma called, waving him over to where she and Victoria were planning a garden bed. As he joined them, kneeling in the dirt despite his good genes, Victoria caught his eye and smiled, that private smile that was just for him. "What are you thinking about?" she asked softly while Emma measured the space for her sunflowers. "How different things were a year ago," he admitted. "How I never saw this coming." Victoria's hand found his, her wedding ring catching the evening light. "I didn't either. I was so focused on the company, on proving myself. I never thought I'd find." She gestured to their home, to Emma, to him. "All of this. Do you ever regret it?" Mark asked. Stepping down as CEO to take the creative director position? After their engagement, Victoria had made the surprising decision to relinquish her role as CEO, choosing instead to lead the company's design division. The move had shocked the business world, with speculation running wild about her reasons. Only Mark knew the truth, that Victoria had made the choice not out of weakness but strength. She'd built the company to prove something to the world, to herself. Now, she was building a life based on what truly mattered to her. "Not for a second," Victoria said firmly. "I built that company because I thought success meant power. Now I know it means having the freedom to choose what matters." She squeezed his hand. "This matters. You and Emma matter." Emma looked up from her gardening. "Victoria, can I ask you something important?" Victoria's expression softened, as it always did with Emma. Of course, sweetheart. Anything. Emma fidgeted with the garden trowel, suddenly shy. At school, Lily's stepmom lets her call her mom now. And I was wondering. She trailed off, her courage faltering. Mark felt his heart constrict. They had been careful about this, never pushing Emma to see Victoria as a replacement for Sarah. They kept photos of Sarah around the house, talked about her often, made sure Emma knew it was okay to love and miss her mother. Victoria knelt down to Emma's level, her eyes serious. Emma, whatever you want to call me is perfect. I will never take your mom's place in your heart. She will always be your mom. Emma nodded solemnly. I know. But I was thinking, maybe I could call you Mama V. Because you're like a mom to me too, just different. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. She pulled Emma into a tight hug, meeting Mark's gaze over their daughter's shoulder. The love and gratitude in her expression mirrored what he felt in his own heart. I would be honored to be your Mama V, Victoria whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Later that night, after Emma was asleep, Mark found Victoria sitting on their back porch, staring up at the stars. He handed her a glass of wine and sat beside her. You okay? He asked, noticing the thoughtful expression on her face. More than okay, she said. I was just thinking about that morning in your kitchen. How terrified I was that you'd throw me out. Mark laughed. I was too shocked to think straight. My intimidating boss wearing my ratty college shirt, making coffee in my kitchen at dawn. It was surreal. I never told you the whole story, Victoria admitted, turning to face him. About why I stayed that night. Mark raised an eyebrow. I assumed it was my irresistible charm. She rolled her eyes, but her smile was fond. When I came to drop off your portfolio, I saw the photo of Sarah on your mantel. She looked familiar. I couldn't place it at first. Mark frowned. You knew Sarah? Victoria shook her head. Not exactly. Remember the children's hospital wing we designed 3 years ago? The one that won the national award? Of course. It was the project that put Reynolds and Chen on the map. The inspiration for that design came from a letter. A mother with terminal cancer wrote to us, asking if we could design a children's ward that didn't feel scary, that made kids feel safe even when they were facing the worst moments of their lives. Victoria's voice softened. She included drawings her daughter had made of what a happy hospital would look like. Mark's heart stopped. Sarah wrote to you? Victoria nodded. I never met her. The letter came through our general submission portal. But her ideas, they changed how I thought about architecture, about the purpose of our work. Those designs launched our company's success. She reached for his hand. When I saw her photo that night,